This is the story of Joanna Stingray, a girl from California who found herself in 1980s Russia on the radar of the KGB and FBI for smuggling out underground Soviet music that Americans were never supposed to hear. Yeah, this music. This is Russian underground rock that the Kremlin never wanted to be written or performed, and they definitely didn't want anyone in the West to be listening to it. Joanna Stingray spent most of the 80s in Leningrad with underground rock royalty, camera in hand. She filmed their music videos, their concerts, and even their drunken nights out. We're taking a deep dive into her video diaries from Russia as Joanna pulled open the Iron Curtain with an album called Red Wave.
Red Wave certainly was one of the first glimpses of Russian music around the world. We knew probably nothing about there even being rock bands that existed over there.
To the outsider, there wasn't real rock and roll in Russia. Everything had to go through the state or be approved by censors and the KGB. But rockers made it happen anyway.
They didn't like the way rock looked. I think they didn't like the way that it riled up the audience. I think they thought, like a lot of people did, that rock and roll led to rebellion and led to craziness.
I couldn't think of anything else but getting back into Russia.
A certain mop-haired guitarist probably had something to do with that. That's Yuri. Though he and Joanna didn't quite speak the same language, they soon made plans to marry. Young, crazy, and in love. But before that happy day, Joanna had work to do. Over the next 2 years, she skirted back and forth between LA and the USSR, carrying donated guitars and keyboards with her. And on every plane ride back, she left with recordings, lyrics, and music videos of Leningrad's top underground rock bands. She stuffed all this cultural contraband into the soles of her shoes and linings of her coats. Red Wave would soon become a hit in the US. Joanna set a wedding date and bought a dress. But then, of course, this happened.
And a telex came back from Moscow that said, Moscow is not expecting Joanna Stingray. It was a message sent from them that here's your payback for doing that record.
Joanna was labeled by the Soviet Union as an enemy of the state. She couldn't get back in to marry Yuri. She took her case to the national press.
It's gonna happen. Somehow we'll make it happen.
And sure enough, it did happen. Joanna's not entirely sure how, but she thinks her enemy status was revoked as an act of goodwill between America and Russia. And Gorbachev was supposedly a fan of rock music, and a copy of the album did make its way to his desk. So she returned to Leningrad, and Joanna and Yuri had their rock and roll, fairy tale, Russian wedding. Things changed really quickly after that. It was a time of perestroika and glasnost, change and openness. They used music to help crack open the USSR to the rest of the world. And ultimately, that made the Cold War just a little bit warmer.